Welcome back, True Seeker. It's Tuesday, September 4th, 2018. The big news story today is the beginning of the confirmation hearings for the potential Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who will replace Anthony Kennedy, who announced he was retiring June 27th of this year. The purpose of this video is to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that our federal government is a ongoing Masonic ritual, and everything is done by a code that is a secret to the people of this nation. If you are new here, please follow from beginning to end. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the comments, or you can pick up my book, Letters and Numbers, that released March of this year, where I teach even more about what I'm about to expose. So, just before we get into this, if you've been following the hearings this morning, the stories are the ongoing protests. If you've tuned into the coverage, there's a lot of protests in the back of the room, a lot of interruptions. People are especially up in arms about Roe v. Wade potentially being overturned. The other big narrative is that Kavanaugh, his history, a lot of it has been blacked out. The Democratic side is bringing up the fact that out of all of the records released for Kavanaugh, they're only allowed to see 10%. So meaning they're only allowed to look at 1 out of 10 documents that go into his work history. And this has never happened before with the confirmation process of a Supreme Court justice. They don't understand why they can only see 1/10 of his records. And then the other thing they're bringing up is out of his work history, which is a long history in DC, there's a 35-month window where everything is blacked out. They can't know anything about what he was working on in those 35 months. And they want to know why that is. And, if this is supposed to be a democracy and we're supposed to be able to make fair choices based on information, these are valid concerns. But what I want you to understand is that all of this is ritual. And in a way, it's part of an ongoing narrative that's just building and getting worse with time. Secrecy. So, this is the code. It is a Masonic code. Freemasonry has its headquarters in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is named after George Washington, the Freemason. Freemasonry is based in Kabbalah. The Freemason Albert Pike, who was a Confederate war general, he has a statue in D.C. He's the only Confederate war general with a statue in D.C. And in that statue, he's holding the book Morals and Dogma. And in that actual book, Morals and Dogma, which was once only available to Freemasons, but now can be purchased pretty much anywhere, he says right in the book, Freemasonry owes all thanks to Kabbalah. And the thing about Kabbalah is, it begins with the Book of Formation. And in the Book of Formation, it says God created the world by merging the letter with the number with the sound. And this belief is the reason the English language is 26 letters. In Hebrew and in English, the word God sums to 26. 26-letter alphabet. In Gematria, the word letter sums to 26, just like the word God sums to 26. And when you learn what's encoded in Hebrew and what's encoded in the words of English, you see all of these overlaps. And you realize that this language has been built for these rituals. And all of these rituals are in perfect sync with the Gregorian calendar, the calendar system we're now on. At the same time in history when the Gregorian calendar was being established in the world, the English language was standardized as a 26-letter alphabet with the spellings we use today for most words. So, today's date, September 4th, 2018. It's a date with 51 numerology, and the word federal has Gematria 51. Federal 51. Big federal news story today. The confirmation process beginning for a Supreme Court justice, the most powerful branch of the 3 branches of government, and a branch that Thomas Jefferson once said would destroy this nation because In his time is when they voted to have just 9 people on the bench, and he said that's too few. For this being a third of the federal government, we can't have just 9 people having so much power. And he said this is the end of America. That's what Thomas Jefferson said when it was decided that the Supreme Court would be 9 justices. So anyway, in addition to the 51 numerology in federal, just in case you're new here, there's 4 base ciphers, and we're going to go over those more thoroughly ahead. So just sit tight, just understand there's 4 base ciphers, meaning if you spell a word, there's going to be 4 numerical outputs, and they're all highly relevant. So we're talking about the 4 base ciphers for the calculations here. In the 4 base ciphers, Kavanaugh equals 49, Washington also equals 49, and think about today's date, September 4th. The majority of the world writes that date 4/9 like 49. So fitting date for the process for Kavanaugh to begin. The name Brett Kavanaugh also has gematria of 227, and 227 is the 49th prime number. Prime number relationships are huge in this study. They show strength because they cannot be divided. So Brett Kavanaugh, 227, 49th prime, 4/9, process begins. Hope we're clear there. Now this number is very important to the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. George Washington was a Scottish Rite Freemason. The headquarters for Freemasonry in D.C. is the Scottish Rite building, the House of the Temple. On the outside of that building, it's etched, Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, which has gematria of 227 in the base ciphers. Again, 227, the 49th prime, Scottish 49. Also, another important word that sums to 49, America in the base cipher, 49, same cipher. Should have put that up there. There's a new hit show on AMC. It's called Lodge 49. It's about a fictional Masonic fraternal order. If you take this gematria code and apply it to the character names and the name of the fictional fraternity, you'll just see all the overlap with Freemasonry and the Scottish Rite. Undeniable. So, also in the base ciphers, Supreme Court sums to 57 and Scottish Rite sums to 57. From the nomination of this man, Brett Kavanaugh, which was July 9th, and we'll get to why it was that date, but from July 9th to today is 57 days later. Perfect. From July 9th to September 4th, 57 days later. Of course, Supreme Court 57, Scottish Rite 57. With just the alphabetic order, A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, D is 4, up to Z is 26. If you write out the name George, as in George Washington, George equals 57. And just so you know, all of these numbers, they have a real world significance. There's a reason that these numbers have been connected to these words. And another word that sums to 57 is the moon. The moon has all this occult symbolism, just like this knowledge of letters and numbers is occult. The word moon equals 57, and there's a real world mathematical relationship with the moon and the earth and 57. As the moon orbits the earth, the way it's measured, the moon's center never goes above the coordinate on earth, 28.5 degrees north. And it never goes below the coordinate 28.5 degrees south. So that's 57 degrees in measurement. 28.5 north to 28.5 south, 57 degrees. And again, moon 57. The moon in its 13 cycles. 13, another special number to Freemasonry and its symbolism. That's why in the dollar, or it's part of the reason why on the dollar bill, which is just loaded with Masonic symbolism, there's the 13 layers of bricks. But anyway, just giving you some knowledge about 57. It has to do with time. These are all rituals and time. Time is everything in this world. We only have so much time. 57 days later. So, also in the base cipher, Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, what's etched on the outside of the Masonic headquarters, also sums to 187. And this number is so relevant to Washington, D.C. The last Supreme Court justice confirmed and now on the bench is Neil McGill Gorsuch. His full name, 187. George Washington, 187. Washington, D.C., 187. Anthony Kennedy announced he was retiring June 27th. That is the day, leaving 187 days left in the year. So we get Neil McGill Gorsuch, 187. Then the next big announcement with the court is the retirement of Anthony Kennedy, again on the day leaving 187 days left in the year. Consider this is happening in the time of Donald Trump. Donald Trump had his GOP convention begin in Ohio on July 18th, 18/7, like 187, exactly a span of 187 days from Inauguration Day. And I said if Donald Trump gets confirmed in Washington, D.C. on January 20th, 2017, do not forget this. This is the ritual. 187. Now, let's just think about some other names in light of Donald Trump. How about Robert Mueller, 187? Robert Mueller, he's another video coming. I used to have a video on him. My channel's been deleted 20 times since June of 2017, if you're not aware. June of 2017, I had nearly 100,000 subscribers. All of my videos were getting about 500,000 views, and it took about 5 years to get it that high. And once the channel was finally taken off, I got deleted by Google, for teaching just like this, for doing this for 5 years. And it'll probably happen again eventually, unfortunately. But I'm never going to stop coming back. I'm always going to be getting out this content until the world knows or enough people know to do something about it. But anyway, Robert Mueller, 187, and not arbitrarily. This guy is another puppet. That's what I want you to understand. This world of the federal government, it's a bunch of puppets. It's a bunch of pawns on the chessboard. It's the cabal that works from the shadows, that operates by the code, that controls these people. Notice Richard Nixon, a man who resigned by the numbers for Gerald Ford. Another thing I used to have a video on, just such a perfect ritual. It's all in my book. But anyway, Richard Nixon, 187. And think about how they've compared Trump to Richard Nixon by the numbers. If I'm not mistaken, it was March 4th where Trump accused Obama of wiretapping. If it wasn't March 4th, it was April 3rd. It was one of those two dates because it was a date with the 43 connection. Wiretap equals 43, Richard equals 43, Masonic 43. It's all ritual. Obama was the 44th president, but he was only the 43rd person to be president, just like how Trump's number 45, but he's only the 44th person to be president. That's because Grover Cleveland was number 22 and number 24, which messed up the count. But anyway, they've been comparing Trump to Richard Nixon and Watergate and the dishonesty and yada, yada, yada. Understand, it's all ritual. Here's another one. Remember how Melania wore baby blue for Inauguration Day? The first lady to wear baby blue since Jackie Kennedy? JFK assassination equals 187. He was killed in the 187th year of the nation's existence in Dealey Plaza, named after a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason. Ancient accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, 187. 187 associated with homicide. If you have not read my book, there's an entire chapter on the Kennedy curse. I show how many people in that family have died in connection to 187. It's not just JFK. And just for another teaching moment here, JFK assassination equals 187 when you use the alphabetic order. A is 1 up to Z is 26. There's another cipher with the alphabetic order where you multiply each letter times 6. Multiplication. A becomes 6, B becomes 12, C becomes 18, so on. 187 times 6 gives you 1122. 1122, like the day he was killed. November 22nd, 63. 11 plus 22 plus 63 equals 96. Freemason equals 96 with the alphabetic order. 11 plus 22 plus 19 plus 63 equals 115. Masonic and killing equal 115 in the base ciphers. Not arbitrary the day JFK was killed. So with regards to Neil McGill Gorsuch, the last man confirmed, Mr. 187 himself, he was the 113th Supreme Court Justice, 113. And Scottish, with the alphabetic order, is 113, as in the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Do you see how this ritual goes? Notice what day he was confirmed. April 7th. 54 to 45 vote. For Obama, number 45, the first man to go in office. By the way, in case you're new here, it was announced November 9th, 2016 that Donald Trump was the 45th president-elect. Berlin Wall equals 45, the anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. Donald Trump, Mr. Wall. If you've never seen my work on him talking to the sheep in the Serta commercial that were standing on pillars with the numbers 11 and 9 on their side, you got to go back. That commercial was from the year 2009. Donald Trump says to the sheep with number 9 on it, "Looking good, number 9, looking good." If you add 1 through 9 together, it equals 45. In that same commercial, Trump talks about being born for the job. Just goes to show the people who are in federal office, they were born and bred to be, they were installed, all part of a planned, sick narrative. And it is sick, because we're all lied to here. From a young age, we have to go to these federal schools and learn how free we are and how great our nation is. Best democracy ever. Everything we do is justified, holy, and perfect. And it's all a lie. We're lied to our whole lives. I don't know why more people aren't fed up, too pacified with the junk food and the television and the movies, the video games, all of it, the consumerism. That's not what life's supposed to be about, but that's what we've made our lives about, being pacified by things that are meaningless, objects that have no meaning. Honesty, integrity, those are the things that matter. Anyway, Neil McGill Gorsuch. Let's come back to him being sworn in on April 7th, confirmed as the Supreme Court Justice who replaced Antonin Scalia, who was murdered by the numbers, as a ritual. And if you go back and look at that Antonin Scalia story, they talk about how he was hunting with his secret society members. I forget what they were called. They all wore these green cloaks. It was a Masonic order. But his whole thing, ritual by the numbers, all lined up with Gorsuch, all things I covered in the past. But anyway, that 4-7 swearing in, April 7th. We write it 4/7 like 47 in this country. Look at judge and gavel with the alphabetic order 47. And these are the base 4 ciphers right here. And notice that judge and gavel are a perfect overlap in all 4. Words that have relationships often have multiple overlap in multiple ciphers. Witch and broom are the same in all 4 ciphers. Judge, gavel. Notice the overlap with 88 when you flip the alphabetic order around. That's making Z1 and counting up to A is 26. Neil McGill Gorsuch also sums to 88. Perfect name for a judge. Perfect name for a judge in Washington, D.C. And with regards to these other ciphers up here, the name Trump has gematria of 25 in the base ciphers. Just for a teaching moment, in case you're new, this is the way the 4 ciphers work. The dark green is the alphabetic order. A is 1 up to Z is 26. The lighter green, where his name sums to 88, where gavel sums, or judge and gavel both sum to 88. That cipher, the way it works, is making Z1 and counting back to A is 26, just the reverse alphabetic order. This dark blue cipher right here is the alphabetic order, but with the rules of numerology. So the word judge starts with J, the 10th letter. In the green cipher, J is worth 10. In the blue cipher, J, you take the numerology of 10. The way you get the numerology of 10 is just adding the digits. The digits of 10 are 1 and 0. 1 plus 0 equals 1. So J is 1 in this cipher. In the green cipher, U is the 21st letter. In the dark blue cipher, it's the numerology of 21. So 2 plus 1 is 3. So U is worth 3. In the green cipher, D is 4. In the blue cipher, D is 4. Because you're just making numbers single digits. So D's already 4, it just stays there. G's 7 in the green, G's 7 in the blue. E's 5 in the green, E's 5 in the blue. You want single digit numbers, then you add the word. The only cipher we haven't covered is the reverse full reduction. That's the alphabetic order in reverse with the rules in numerology. And here's the thing. If you learn the alphabetic order A to Z, you learn what each letter is. So just on command, if I asked you, what number is Q? If you haven't memorized it, oh, Q is the 17th letter. If you learn the placement of each letter, which really doesn't take that long to do if you just put your mind to it, just write out some words by hand and count out the alphabetic order and force yourself to write out some words by hand and make the calculations. You can do this faster than you think. This is elementary arithmetic. But the thing is, if you memorize the alphabetic order, and you just know the alphabetic order, you can make any of these calculations in the base cipher in your head. For example, if you know that Q is the 17th letter with the alphabetic order, you can instantly find out what it is in the reverse alphabetic order. There's just a formula. It's 27 minus its placement in the alphabetic order. So let's use Q again. 27 minus 17 is 10. So Q is 10 with the reverse alphabetic order. Now, if you know that it's 10 with the reverse alphabetic order, you also know what it is with the reverse reduction method, because you just take the numerology of 10. And I know you can add 1 plus 0 equals 1, so Q is 1 in the reverse numerology. And of course, I know you can also do it with the regular numerology, where Q is the 17th letter, because 1 plus 7 is 8. So just by knowing the alphabetic order, you can make all calculations with all ciphers. And this is a skill you definitely want to have, you know. The more you work with it, the better you get. So now let's come back to this 88 thing with Judge and Gavel and Donald Trump, and, you know, already early in his term, looks like he's going to put in his second justice. Neil Miguel Gorsuch, 88, the Republican Party, 88, George Washington, 88, Trump, 88. Remember when he was endorsed by 88 generals just before the election on September 6th, 9/6, Freemason 96? How about just the other week on August 21st when Manafort, which equals 88 with the alphabetic order, was found to be guilty on 8 counts, and then later that day, Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to 8 counts. See what they did? If you write out August 21st, it also has gematria of 88. That was the date of that 8 and 8 ritual. And understand, it's all ritual. I should have put up here Masonic ritual. I'll just show you. Masonic ritual, 88. You see? 88, a number that symbolizes time. This all goes back to time. Remember, in 88, there's 4 circles. In each circle, there's 360 degrees. 4 times 360 is 1,440 degrees of measurement. 1440, just like how there's 1,440 minutes in a day. That's why they time travel at 88 miles per hour and Back to the Future. It's all symbolic of time. The movies are full of this symbolism. The people who control Hollywood are the same people who control your government, your news, and they encode everything this way. This is so important to them because Kabbalah is their belief system. This is the way God created the world with the letter and number. This is the way they play God over the world with the letter and number. So now look, with the base ciphers, again, we're talking about 47. Judge and Gavel, Gorsuch sworn in on April 7th. In the base ciphers, I want you to see that all of these words have gematria of 47. DC. DC was designed by a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason from France, L'Enfant, and France, with the alphabetic order 47. But notice, DC 47, Obey 47, Government 47, Authority 47, Trump 47. Trump was in the 47-story Midtown Hilton Hotel the night of the election, November 2016. The word Caesar has gematria 47. The word President 47. All roads lead to Rome. White House 47. Republican 47. Whig 47. Democrat 47. And I just want you guys to know that when I started this research, the only 2 ciphers I knew about were the ones on the left. The alphabetic order and the alphabetic order with the rules of numerology. When I discovered that there was this reverse gematria, I wondered if it was relevant. And I put it to the test by looking at things such as this. And when I saw how everything else lined up with the 47s, I said, there's no way this is a coincidence. This is the other half of the code. We've been missing this. So for half the time I'd been doing this research, I didn't know about the other half of the code. And since we've seen the other half, it's helped us connect a lot of dots. You know, and it makes sense because in this occult knowledge, things are the same, backwards and forwards, as above, so below. And consider this code originally comes from Hebrew, where in Hebrew you read from right to left, whereas in English we read from left to right. So, 47, why does it matter? Again, the reason it matters is right here. It's Freemasonry. Their compass, or their symbol, is a compass and square with a capital G in the middle. Instruments of geometry around a capital G. And here we are talking about gematria, which means geometry in language. And notice, the compass is set at 47 degrees. It's a tribute to the 47th problem of Euclid about how to establish foundation for a structure. And notice foundation sums to 47. Think about the foundation of this nation, July 4th, the 4th day of the 7th month. Now notice the G in the middle. G's the 7th letter. There's a relationship between 4 and 7. If you come to gematrinator.com and you go to number properties and you put in a number, it'll show you things about that number. 4, the numbers that divide into it, its divisors, they sum to 7. The divisors of 4 sum to 7. If you put in 7, you'll notice that 7 is the 4th prime number. And again, prime numbers, so important. They signify strength. Now, 4 is relevant to the Bible. The 4th book of the Bible is Numbers. And the meaning of these numbers, it comes from Kabbalah, and that meaning from Kabbalah has been encoded into the Bible. The knowledge within the Bible comes from knowledge before it. Kabbalah, Hermeticism, Kundalini. I want you to see something. Hermeticism. Actually, I just want the word hermetic. They're the same thing. Hermetic. Notice it sums to 45 and 45 in 2 of the 4 base ciphers. This is the exact same with Holy Bible. 4 letters, 5 letters. Holy's 4, Bible is 5, 45, 45. And if you add 1 through 9 together, there's 9 letters in Holy Bible, it sums to 45. Now, in Hermeticism, there's 7 laws, and one of those laws is the law of vibration. And it says everything in this world carries a vibration. Every number, every letter. And the vibrations, they have this essentially subconscious impact on all things living. They influence behavior. They influence decisions. And when you start to study these things and realize that there's these meanings and understanding in the world, you start to understand why people are encoding numbers and letters together. And you start to realize, oh wow, as you read the Bible, why things are the way they are. The Bible is so well thought out, the verse numbers, the counts of things. You know, if you don't understand this knowledge and you read about the miraculous catch of 153 fish, you know, it's just a number. It's just 153 fish, but you don't know why. But I'll explain to you why. 153 is the 17th triangular number. The 17th triangular number, meaning if you add 1 through 17 together, it equals 153. Notice God equals 17. Notice rest equals 17. 17 is the 7th prime number. And think about what the first letter is in God. It's G, the 7th letter. God rested on the 7th day after he created the world. And realize at the beginning of the Bible, God speaks the world into existence over numbered days. Kabbalah, the world was created by God merging the letter with the number with the sound. And notice, God, 26. Notice letter, 26. Notice sound, 26. All in the base ciphers. You know, Adam, the first man is made in the 26th verse of the Bible. Adam 26. Why is mankind made on the 6th day in the 26th verse? 6 is the first perfect number. If you don't know what perfect numbers are, they're the numbers where its divisors add to the number itself. So the numbers that divide into 6, besides 6, are 1, 2, and 3. 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6. 6 is a perfect number. Man was made in God's image, perfected. The next perfect number is 28. And look at what the word man equals. 28. You see? The word number also has gematria of 28. The next perfect number is a huge number. It's like 496. So 6 and 28 are the only small ones. There's not a lot of perfect numbers. But understand, all of this stuff so cleverly thought out. Numbers are perfect, by the way. You know, that's why people use numbers to count. And if you have not read my book, the first chapter is why are there 26 letters in the English alphabet? Just so you know, there's way more to this. Way more. You know, this is just the tip of the iceberg, this video. Just in case you're new here, you know, I really want people to understand this. Let's talk about something. Let's talk about this nation's birthday for just a moment more before we move on with the Supreme Court thing, because there's a lot more there too. July 4th, we write that date 7/4 in the U.S., like 74. Notice holiday 74. Look at what happens when I write out Independence Day. 74. 74. Now I want you to understand. Dark green cipher on the left is the alphabetic order. English, 74. Consider London's also 74, where modern Freemasonry was established. But this practice of coding numbers into words is gematria, 74, which means geometry and language. It's a Masonic practice, 74. It is a Jewish practice, 74. It is an occult practice, 74. What are the odds of all of these things lining up this way? There's a song out there called Gematria, the killing name, Killing 74. Remember, 3 of the first 5 presidents died on July 4th. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams died on the same day, July 4th, 1826. 1,826 days later, July 4th, 1831, James Monroe died. You know? George Washington, a name with gematria 74. George Washington kicked the bucket at age 67, number that's connected to blood sacrifice. A lot of people have been murdered by this number. The day George Washington died was December 14th, 187. Notice also the 88. As we covered earlier, George Washington in these same ciphers is 187 and 88. And you can also write 1214. Another way you might express that date, 12, let me spell it right here. 1214, notice it also has the 187 in it. You know? Recently in history, on December 14th, there was a major homicide story. You might recall that story. Skinny kid. They said he was 112 pounds and he shot up the place called Sandy Hook. They also said that kid was born on April 22nd, the 112th day of the year. You know? Rituals. Remember, the things that are authority in this nation, from government to police, are all controlled by Freemasonry. In this nation, 90% plus of police officers are part of Freemasonry, primarily the Scottish Rite. 187, the Police Homicide Code. Not arbitrary. Fraternal Order of Police has gematria of 187. So now let's move on. Let's talk more. Let's get back on the path here that we're on with the Supreme Court justices. April 7th, the day Neil McGill Gorsuch was confirmed, our judge, gavel, obey, government authority number 47. That's also the 97th day of the year. And look at the word supreme, 97. 97 is also the 25th prime number, and notice judge is 25. 97, the 25th prime. It's just so perfect. Supreme, Supreme Court, a judge, a gavel. For Trump, and again, like I said, Trump is 25. When Trump first took office, the Time magazine, by the way, Time equals 25 as well. Time magazine wrote an article about how Trump could be the first president to be removed with the 25th Amendment. It's never happened before. And that would take Mike Pence, 25, to do it. We'll see if these things unfold. That story released by the numbers. And I wish I could remember what was on the cover. Was it Nothing to See Here? It was. This is what's on the cover of that Time magazine with Donald Trump and the 25th Amendment. It's a drawing of him. He's at his desk. There's a windstorm behind him. His comb-over's blowing so nicely in the air. Remember Donald Trump, the comb-over versus James Comey, the puppet stooge for the FBI, comb-over versus Comey, all by the numbers. But anyway, look at how they encoded that cover. And realize the reason I recall these things is because I've taught about them so many times. I've been doing this for 5 years. I wrote a book about it. So a lot of it is stored away up here. But I still forget a lot too. You know, if I could remember everything, this would be even more thorough. But just look at the numbers here. 187, 88, 74. Time Magazine, the media, they do everything by this code. They think it all out. They release it by the date, give you the right titles. Anyway, what a day to install a Supreme Court justice, April 7th. And remember how long they waited after the death of Antonin Scalia. Show you something about Antonin. Antonin equals 87, very bizarre name. Justice 87. And do you remember what they said was bizarre about his death? They found a pillow over his head. And if you go back and look at the work I did, which is still on my blog, it's in my book. Read my book if you haven't. I can't emphasize enough. Where he died was near where Dick Cheney, the vice president to George W. Bush, George W., born on the 187th day of the year, July 6th, kind of like 6/7, like how George Washington died at 67. Anyway, remember when Dick Cheney accidentally blasted somebody in the face on his quail hunting trip? That was right by where Antonin Scalia died. And again, there's this cipher where you multiply times 6. I don't want to misquote myself, but I do remember it's this number, and I think it's 522 weeks from the Dick Cheney incident to the death of Scalia. If it's not that, it's 522 weeks from the day the cartoon was released making fun of Dick Cheney. And in that same cartoon, they brought up Antonin Scalia to Scalia's death. But either way, what it is, it just shows you how perfectly mapped out all of this stuff is. And I don't want to misspeak, but I do know the riddle is one of those two things. Like I said, I recall a lot of things, but I can't remember everything perfectly off the top of my head. But go back and look. It's on the blog. It's in my book. It's all there. So, July 9th, coming now to Brett Kavanaugh. July 9th, remember Donald Trump said in a week advance, he said, I'm going to wait till July 9th to give you my nomination. Like, why wait? Why wait? If you got your pick, just give it now. What's the point of keeping us in suspense? Is this a movie? Is this a TV show? Well, sort of it is. You'll find that Hollywood releases all of their films by the numbers, by this code. That's why Hollywood will make a movie and wait a year, 2 years to release it, because it's all released by this ritual. The entire world of elites, the cabal, operates by this code of Kabbalah. So look, here's why he waited until July 9th. First of all, that date can be written 9/7 like 97, his Supreme Court nomination. Further, if you write out July 9th in the base cipher, it equals 47. How perfect. And again, 97, the 25th prime, Judge Trump 25. Also, it's because it lines up perfectly this way. They wanted to do Brett Kavanaugh, his hearing process starting today by the numbers. And from July 9th to this day is 57 days. They get all of their riddles right. This is how the code is so easy to prove and understand once you see it. And I always feel bad for the people who watch my videos and say, man, I hate math. This is so boring. I don't know why you even care about this. To me, it's like, well, what I care about is the truth, and I want to have understanding of the world I live in. And I've known I've been lied to from a young age, a very young age. Look, I'll tell you what did it for me. I was 17 years old. And I was living in Washington State. And in our papers, and even in the national news, for the month before the election of George W. Bush versus Gore, they were saying it was coming down to Florida. The entire election was going to come down to Florida. And the history class that I had at the time, I was talking to my teacher a lot, and I was saying, if they know a month before the election that it's going to come down to this state, what are we even voting for? And then so I wanted to watch and see if this was true. And my teacher was explaining to me, he's like, well, we do all this polling, and the polling's very exact, and it's very accurate, and oftentimes they can predict things before. But the thing was, it was going to come down to Florida. And what I realized from back then, was Jeb Bush, Bush's brother, was the governor. And I thought, well, that just seems so weird. It's going to come down to the state where his brother's the governor, plus the last Republican president was his father. I mean, it didn't seem democratic to me. It seemed like I was looking at a society where it was kings and queens. King George I, King George II, King George I's son governing where the election's going to come down to. Now realize I didn't know anything about gematria, but I just knew something was wrong. Now recall, George W. Bush became the 43rd president. And if you look this up, it's all fact. Jeb Bush was the 43rd governor of Florida all time. 43rd. George W. Bush would go on to become the 43rd president. And the father, Papa Bush, he was the 43rd vice president to Reagan. That's a lot of 43. Now, the two that were presidents went to Yale and Skull and Bones. And look at Yale, 43. Yale's in New Haven, CT. Oh, whoops, I spelled it wrong. I was like, what's wrong? New Haven, CT, the way you'd write it on an envelope. New Haven, CT, 43. That's where Yale Skull and Bones is. Notice the 47 as well. Don't overlook it. The 115 jumps too because Masonic is 43 and 115. But, learning this after the fact, it just makes me go, oh my God. I mean, it came down to Florida for the 43rd president, Florida 43. You can just see what they're doing. I mean, I don't know how anyone could look at an example like this and go, oh, well, I think that's all a coincidence. I just think that's all a coincidence. I mean, who cares? And sadly, that's how so many people react to this knowledge. For me, figuring this out has been the greatest gift because I knew something was wrong. And when I started to realize there was something to numbers, it was on September 11th, of course. I was already like, I can't believe this is going on. We have King George II. This guy can't even formulate a sentence. And then all of a sudden, in New York City on 911, like our national emergency dialing code, these buildings come crumbling to the ground like a perfect demolition. And not only that, but not all the building made it to the ground. I was just looking at it, I was like, look how the buildings turn into dust in the air and just floating into New York. What? That's a great amount of force. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And 911, and I was trying to ask people about it, and everyone was like, oh, what are you, a conspiracy theorist? And I was like, oh God. So, I had to go into isolation for a while and do some reading and some researching and studying, and it took a long time to figure out what was up with this numbers thing. But then I finally figured it out, and I said, oh my God, this is what they're doing. I got to tell everybody about it. And that's pretty much what's been going on since 2013, because it really did take me from about 2001 to 2013 to crack this number code. And we crack it more every day. There's always more to learn. I know a lot, but there's still way more to learn. But I'll remind you, just in case you're new here, what I learned before I learned the number code was that in 1968, Bush, George W., graduated from Yale and Skull and Bones. 911 was made the national emergency dialing code. By the way, they made 911 the national emergency dialing code February 16th of 68, the 47th day of the year. Foundation. But Bush graduated in 68. 911 made the national emergency dialing code. World Trade Center construction started. If you want to throw another one in there, Space Odyssey 2001 was released. All 33 years before 911. The number 911 is the 156th prime number. If you write out 33, it sums to 156. If you write out false flag, it sums to 33. Masonry equals 33, secrecy 33, order 33, federal 33. And if you bring out the Jewish gematria cipher, which is very important, false flag's also 156. And again, I always got to bring this up. Tisha B'Av is to remember the destruction of the two temples in Jerusalem. The two temples. 911. 911, the two towers. It's not a coincidence. It's all ritual. The leader of Israel was in the United States the day after, and he said we needed to declare war on terrorism. And that's exactly what we did. So back to the justice thing. July 9th to September 4th, 57 days later, our Supreme Court Scottish Rite number, our moon number, our time number. The other thing about July 9th to September 4th is it's a span of 58 days. The difference is, in one count, you're saying, okay, September 4th comes 57 days after July 9th. In this count, what you're doing is you're counting the date July 9th too. That's the full span of days. It's 58 days. And 58, so important. Freemasonry, 58. Rosicrucian, 58. Secret Society, 58. Freemasonry secrets are in Solomon's Temple from Jerusalem. Solomon's Temple, 58. Your first 3 levels of Masonry, you have to do the tracing boards, which are connected to Solomon's Temple, 58. And there's so much more to this. Jerusalem equals 58. Rosicrucianism is what gave birth to Freemasonry. Rose Cross is what Rosicrucian means, symbol of secrecy, 58. And so much more. But this has to do with Trump as well, the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court picks have to do with the president. Donald Trump is the winner of the 58th U.S. presidential election. He announced he was running from the 58-story Trump Tower. For Inauguration Day, he hired the 58-year-old Steve Ray. And that date was January 20th, 2017, a date with 58 numerology. I'll remind you again, they couldn't take their eyes off Ivanka, the camera. If you go back and watch the footage, the way the news covered it, 50% of the coverage was the camera on Ivanka. 58. You see? These numbers, these rituals. Notice Washington and United States also have gematria 58. And here's a moment of teaching. What's different between this single reduction cipher and this full reduction cipher? The only difference is the letter S. S is the 19th letter. In numerology, 19 becomes 1 plus 9 is 10. And then you take the 10 and you go 1 plus 0 is 1. S is the only letter in the alphabet you have to reduce 2 times to get to a single digit. So it has this special property. S can be worth 1 or 10. And when you make S worth 10, Washington's 58, United States is 58. Look at We the People, 58. Look at Don't Tread on Me, 58. What's on the dollar bill? Annuit coeptis, 58. Means God favors our undertaking. A lot of times I can't spell the 4-letter name of God. Let me see if I get Tetragrammaton. That is how you spell it. Tetragrammaton, 58. That's the 4-letter name of God. In God we trust, 58. You see what's going on here? This entire code of letters and numbers is in tribute to God. In Freemasonry, you have to believe in God. God created the world by merging the letter with the number. You see who's playing God? I think you do. They have some little intricacies in their code, too, that helps you see more, you know? Also, I just want to send a thank you to Manly P. Hall. Manly P. Hall is the Freemason who put out the most information about Freemasonry secrets in many different texts. Manly P. Hall, 42. Freemason, 42. And Manly P. Hall, the one cipher he told people to use is this one, the dark blue one. Manly P. Hall waited 47 years to go from a 32nd degree Freemason to his 33rd degree. He waited 47 years. And in his book, he shares how Plato of the Greeks, he waited until he was age 47 to get his highest honor in their rites, their secret society of their time. And he got his highest honor down in Egypt, you know. They say all roads lead to Rome, but really they go past Rome and they go into Egypt. And then they go back into Babylon and Sumer. So, here we are, it's September 4th. You know, we're having this rowdy hearing. If you turned it on, it is really rowdy. I mean, there's constant interruptions. They're saying it's never been like this before. And I understand it's all part of this contrived thing that they want. This is what they want. They want the nation divided. They want the nation angry, confused, pitted against each other. I said all of this was going to happen before Trump was in office. If you weren't here, I had the weirdest thing that ever happened to me while I was making a video is I was saying, like, why it made so much sense for Trump to be the next president in light of the divide and conquer agenda, the order out of chaos agenda, the things we're seeing going on in the media. And while I was talking, the lights in the room just turned on by themselves. And that had never happened before. It never happened since. But it made me go, oh wow, that's like the light bulb going off thing. And it was so weird. And to me, a little tangential story. This beautiful girl that I was very good friends with in high school, and who I kind of lost as a friend for being a truth teller over the years. When we were younger, one time she said to me, she goes, you know what I think, Zach? She goes, I've never told anybody this. Don't tell anybody. I'm so embarrassed, but I just want to share it with somebody. She goes, Zach, I think light bulbs are how God connects with us. I think God communicates through light bulbs. And I didn't know what to think at the time. I thought that was just so strange. I said, and I think what I said is, I said, well, that's interesting. I guess God's energy, and yeah, maybe. And she's like, I've just seen these weird things with lights in my life. And I'll tell you what, that day the lights went on in my room for whatever reason when I was speaking about Trump and how he's probably going to be the next president. I think that was God saying, yeah, you're exactly right, and you need to keep doing what you're doing, and you need to wake people up to this agenda that's meant to make us all fight and conquer ourselves, which is what's been going on, and it's just getting worse. So anyway, September 4th, it's written 9/4, kind of like 94 as well. Also 4/9 like 49, but just with the 94 piece, I just want you to see that when you write out 94, it sums to 147. When you write out 47th, it sums to 147. In the 47th chapter of Genesis, Jacob dies at 147. Consider Jacob becomes Israel. Israel was recognized as a nation by the United Nations in 1947. United Nations has that gematria 57 like Scottish Rite. The United Nations has done a lot of big favors for Israel, including looking the other way for a lot of atrocities. Jews also equals 57. Again, this code is largely Jewish. If you're not aware, the Jews do identify through the moon. In Jewish spirituality, they say the moon symbolizes them because the moon, it nearly disappears in the night sky as it goes through its cycles, only to return full. And throughout history, the Jews have been nearly wiped off the face of the earth, only to return full. So, a little more knowledge about the meaning of 57. But anyway, 47 also connects to the judge thing. The Supreme Court judge is picked by the U.S. President, 147. President of the United States, 147. Freemason, 147. Conspiracy, 147. It's not arbitrary. There's 147 windows on the White House. It's also not arbitrary. There's 132 rooms. Again, everything is thought out. United States of America, 132. You know, supposedly we got our independence from England, 132. We didn't. It's a lie. Notice there's also 32 bathrooms. America, 32. 32 bathrooms. Sometimes we, the Americans, it feels like we're treated, you know, like we're excrement in the toilet, being lied to, being deceived, you know, being terrorized, being taxed, overtaxed, you know, taxed up to the gills. The date of establishment for this nation, July 4th, 1776, 7 plus 4 plus 1 plus 7 plus 7 plus 6 equals 32 as well. 6 levels. Why 6 levels? I'll tell you right here. 6, 52. White House, 52. Government, 52. Authority, 52. President, 52. You see? Now you know the secrets about all the architecture of the White House. Well, almost. I'll leave the 412 doors to Derek. He likes those bigger numbers. I actually don't know what the riddle to that one is right now, but I'm sure there is a riddle to it. You know, rest assured, the numerology of 412 is 7. 4 plus 1 plus 2, 7. That might be part of it. 7 staircases and 3 elevators. Mason 73. United 73. Prime number. Anyway, with regards to Kavanaugh, he's going to be the 114th Supreme Court Justice if he's confirmed. President of the United States also has gematria of 114, so does history. Want some World War history? World War 114. How about Pearl Harbor? 114. Why'd they do Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 12/7, Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, 127. Every war started and ended by the numbers. Undeniable. Read my book. Can't emphasize it enough times. And the piece of history that a lot of people are concerned about, and at the same time a lot of people would be happy about, a divisive thing in this nation, is Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade. Could it be overturned after 45 years? Roe versus Wade happened in 73. 73 to this year is 45 years later. Pro-life has that gematria of 45. And most pro-lifers are very much into the Bible. We're in the time of Donald Trump, the 45th president. Could the man who joins the court 45 years later be the man to tip it and overturn Roe versus Wade? Just understand, if it's done, it's all ritual. With regards to 45 and babies, remember, in numerology, 9 represents completion. And the reason that is because of a woman's, her fertility cycle. 9 months, the typical pregnancy. You add 1 through 9, 45. So in terms of the way these people do rituals, it really does make sense for, to overturn Roe versus Wade at this moment in history, and with this man elected 45 years later. Will it happen as soon as this year? It's possible, but usually the Supreme Court takes a little while to do things. 9 being the number, they're saying 90% of his work history is blacked out. Nobody has access to it. I mean, that should concern anybody. And I don't know if I should say this part. People always get mad at me for saying this thing. Again, Republican and Democrat both equals 47. They're two coins of the same side. But people always get mad at me for this part. Might ruin the video for some people. But I don't ever see the Democrats doing, and understand, I hate the Democrat Party. They have no spine. They don't stand up for anything. They just get bullied and beat up by the Republican Party. It seems like that's their role, to be like the little kid brother that can't fight back against the big bully brother. Like they're supposed to portray weakness and incompetence. That's my perception of the Democratic Party. But what I don't see them ever do is, get up in front of Congress or, the people and just be so adamant about things like, well, it doesn't matter that 90% of his record's blacked out because he has a great record and all of the pages are here anyway and the 10% we can see is great. I just heard, one of their members say that this morning, and I'm just thinking, really, man? All of it's here? Who cares if we can only see 10% of it? Republicans will just say things like that with such confidence. And that's the difference between Republicans. It's like they speak with confidence. They don't even care what they're saying. And the Democrats, they just kind of, I don't know. They're just like little wimps. But the Republicans just disgust me. They both disgust me. But just like what I just described, it irks me so much. And the Republicans have done that stuff for all of my life, as long as I've been aware and paid attention to this stuff. And my point is, we need to get rid of the federal government. We need to get rid of both of these parties. If we're going to have government, let's just have state government, because that's a lot more manageable. For most of us, it's like we can't get to Washington, D.C. to protest. We can't get there to hold them accountable. It's thousands of miles away. We're debt slaves. We have to be here working and paying the bills and keeping up our property and feeding our family. How am I supposed to go all that way to have my voice heard, And if you guys have ever heard me call politicians before, I never get a phone call back, So, state government, I could drive to my state capital. That's a 2-3 hour drive. I can get there. That's possible. I can do that. I can hold them accountable. I can rally up the people in my neighborhood. We can get there and hold them accountable. Some government's just too big, like our federal government. This big monster that we can't fight back against. Not unless we get everybody on board to commit at once, And that is a monumental task. I mean, just look at our news. I mean, the hearing, Trump, the Clintons, they just keep it in the same little box. There's so much hatred for the Clintons. Think about how Trump, when Trump's comments came out before the presidential election, it was exactly a span of 33 days before the vote when the comments came out about, from him. He's talking to Billy Bush, right, a relative of a former president, the Bush dynasty, on a bus, He's talking about what he can do to women because he's a celebrity. That came out a span of 33 days from the election. Federal 33, and he's running against Hillary Clinton 33, and Bill Clinton, who has all this focus about all of his sexual misbehavior in the time of his presidency and before. And if you go back and look at most of his accusers, strangely enough, pretty much all their names sum to 33. But just to close it out here, just keeping us in this box of, Republican, Democrat, oh, I hate Bill Clinton, oh, I love Bill Clinton, blah, 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 divide and conquer. When Hillary lost the election, she put out a book, and it's called What Happened? What Happened, 58? Why she lost the 58th U.S. presidential election. See what a joke it all is, Truth Seeker? So, we'll leave it there. Long lesson. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you finished and watched it out. If you're new here, please do pick up the book. It's linked in the description of every one of my videos. The book is Letters and Numbers. It is an electronic book because the publisher who was supposed to publish this for me backed out. They backed out on it. I'm still looking for a publisher. The more people who buy this electronic book, the more clout it gives me to go to a publisher and say, look how many copies this is sold just in electronic form. The other thing about this being an electronic book, the nice things about it is it makes it real easy to search the book for things you're looking for. You can just do a search, Control F on your computer should get you there. You can search for keywords. The book's 773 pages, so it makes it very quick to search through the book. You want to find the stuff I wrote about Neil McGill Gorsuch and his nomination by the numbers in the book, Antonin Scalia, other things we've talked about, other things, period, JFK assassination. You just need to search those key terms and bam, you'll be right there. That's the nice thing about having this on your computer or your phone. Also, you're more than welcome to print out the book. And like I've said to everyone, if you buy one copy, and realize I priced this thing at $5, not because it's cheap, but because I want everyone to be able to afford it. But if you buy one copy, I don't care if you print 1 million copies and go out and pass them out to your whole city, all your friends and family. I don't care. Your $5 donation's enough. I do this work to get out the knowledge. It's never been about money. If you're new here, I did this for 5 years for free. I didn't have a single ad on my channel. Didn't raise a single dollar. Meanwhile, in that time, I had a lot of horrible things happen to me. I had my entire home burglarized. I had to deal with death threats. On Christmas Eve, I had an SUV crash through 2 walls in my house. I couldn't get insurance to pay for it. I had to pay a ton of money to fix my own house. I've had all sorts of nightmares happen to me for doing this work. I've been a man on a mission. I haven't stopped. I'll never stop. But the thing is, I ran out of money. Having to fix my house, having to overcome all that was lost, using up my savings. I came to a point where I said, okay, I got to raise some money. And I figured if people buy this book at a good enough rate, if I can sell 30 copies a day, then that's plenty of money to pay all my bills and take care of everything, If I sell even 20 copies a day at $5, I can probably take care of the bills. But I feel that this book should sell at that rate. In recent days, it has been selling at that rate, which I'm so grateful for. If it continues, that's enough money to finance going forward, to continue doing this work. That's why the price is low. I'm a modest person. I want you to have the book. I want you to be able to afford it. I feel that $5 for an electronic book, even though it's 773 pages and took me 5 years to write, I feel the price is right. Of course, the day this comes out in paper form, when that day happens, it's going to cost more than $5 because you can't make a book this long for $5. It's just impossible. So buy it now, print it out. You don't have to even print out the whole thing. You can print out the first chapter. Print out the first chapter. Print out 50 of the first chapter. Pass them out to your friends and family. I don't know who could read the first chapter of this book and deny it. Should get people hooked. Should get people curious. Print out the chapters one by one. Introduce somebody to the first chapter. A month later, introduce them to the second chapter. I wrote it all in a logical order. It's written for the beginner. It's written for the veteran. Want everyone to know this code that speaks English. When everyone knows this code, or when enough people know this code, then we'll have a populace that's ready to make a change. And, hoping that happens sooner than later. Links in the description, Truth Seeker. Until next time.